Now, TikTok CEO Shou Zi-Chew is testifying before the US House Energy and Commerce Committee. He's facing questions about the social media platform's alleged relationship with the Chinese Communist Party and its use of data. Colin Baker explains how TikTok and other social media platforms use data.
TikTok is a leader in grabbing people's attention. To do this, it needs lots of their data. Users need to give access to their phone's camera, microphone, photos, video, contacts, location information, and to their behavior online. Now, this is all similar to what other major social media companies ask for, too.
This is an industry practice as a whole to violate our rights to privacy, to sell ads. And this is why we need strong data protection rule to end this damaging attitude that everyone is breaching privacy, so why shouldn't we?
Most of us know about cookies, which put code from the web onto our devices. Companies also use what's known as a pixel tracker to keep tabs on users as they browse the web. These are bits of code hidden as tiny images in web pages or emails that report back to the company when you visit. Pixels are deployed by most big companies on most websites. They're not always consented to, but they are mostly legal. In a study by Ferrut, a Canadian security company, pixel trackers from TikTok were found across the web, as were pixel trackers from the other major social media giants. But TikToks were also found on government websites that did not know they were there. And the US government has fined 2 American health companies for using pixels to track users while they were looking at sensitive personal health websites.
You start with a violation of privacy by just following people by following people online and trying to know what they're doing. But once you get inside in those habits, then the company have an interest to try to see how they can exploit that. And company may exploit that to sell you more ads, but then other actor may exploit that to try to change your political view.
Tracking is now a big part of our browsing experience because our data has become the most valuable commodity for companies.
Well, Mike Hanna's been listening in to Shou Zi-Chew's testimony for us. Mike, what's been happening?
Well, the chief executive officer has faced a very hostile grilling over the past 90 minutes, largely hostile from all members of the committee. This is ongoing. The basic point was accusations that TikTok is controlled by China and in fact shares its data with China. Now, this was denied strongly by the chief executive officer, who denied that the data is shared with the Chinese government or indeed even with the parent company, ByteDance. These were very serious accusations. The FBI director was in Congress recently and said that TikTok presents a national security issue. This was the tenor of many of the questions asked of Shou Zi-Chew, and certainly a very, very hostile questioning from the members of the committee in the course of the morning.
What's TikTok's defense?
Well, the chief executive officer insisted that TikTok was taking measures to ensure that its data did not move outside the US. For example, he is outlined a project called the Texas Project, in terms of which all the servers would be brought within the United States. They would be supervised by a US tech company, and they would be constantly examined by independent observers. He says very clearly that this is something that no other media company has offered, no other tech company has offered. However, this was largely pushed aside because those in the committee asking very closely about what is happening now with TikTok, not what it proposes to do in the future. There have also been those observers who contend that this is a freedom of speech issue, that to outlaw TikTok would be to infringe the First Amendment of the US Constitution. Then there are those, perhaps cynically, who are arguing that the US authorities are using all these issues against TikTok to reassume US ownership of the company and therefore thereby reclaim US dominance in the tech sector, something which TikTok, being in China, is denying the US at present.
OK, Mike Hanna, many thanks for keeping us across events there in Washington. Well, Chris Stokel-Walker is a tech and digital culture writer and the author of the book TikTok Boom, China's Dynamite app and the superpower race for social media. And he joins us now from Newcastle upon Tyne in the UK. Thanks very much for being with us. Shou Zi-Chew, I mean, he's prepped endlessly for this committee hearing. How do you think he's doing so far?
I think that he had a pretty rough barracking at the start. These people who are part of this committee are kind of pretty much already decided, I think, on what they think of TikTok, and they're deciding to use this almost as a staging post for getting across quite how angry they are. Of course, we have to bear in mind that there are larger geopolitical issues around this, and the discomfort around the first kind of major social media platform of origin outside of the United States starting to become a big thing. It has been a really tough time at the minute, and quite a lot of heat and not a lot of light into actually what some of the issues are.
How real is the US's fear that TikTok might make some private data of US users accessible to the Chinese government?
Holding that fear is absolutely fine and absolutely valid, but there is very little actual evidence of that. In fact, none whatsoever of some of the more outlandish things that have been said. And it has been notable just quite how tech illiterate a lot of these questions have been. Asking, for instance, the CEO of TikTok to answer relatively complex questions of how algorithms work and how data processes and transfers work, which are very, very concerning. And these are things that we need to get answers to, but you can't answer them as has been asked in this hearing with a yes or a no, which is kind of doing a disservice, I think, to both TikTok because they want to get across their point of view, but also to those who really want to try and understand whether those fears are real. Worth pointing out, so far, no real evidence that these things that are being claimed are actually true, and TikTok does, of course, deny them.
Because the other fear, of course, is that TikTok has the potential to manipulate its users with the algorithm and predict and provide what it wants to show to people. That, some people would say that that's not also possible, it's not really realistic. What's your opinion there? Because this is something that most social media companies can do anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing. The idea that social media networks and platforms can manipulate us into consuming content that we maybe didn't know we wanted to watch is a real risk. It's also not one that's unique to TikTok. We have seen mass manipulation campaigns on all platforms of all origins in the past. And I think, some of this kind of headwind behind TikTok's ban is a bit misguided because ultimately, if the Chinese Communist Party really wanted to try and overthrow the West, which is what some of these more outlandish statements seem to claim, they could do that quite as easily through state-sponsored campaigns on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. Indeed, they do try that already. So I don't really buy this concern that does seem to be shared by kind of the more strident anti-China hawks in the US, that this is somehow a unique proposition for TikTok.
What is interesting as well is this is quite a bipartisan issue, isn't it? There's people across the board who are pretty wary of TikTok. We've got the Biden administration saying that the company could potentially be sold to a US company, and if it's not, then it could face a potential ban. But are either really realistic?
Not really, and that's in large part because there are two sides to this story. TikTok does still have some links to China in terms of its business, and just in the same way that the United States can put export bans on companies leaving its country, China can do the same. And the Commerce Secretary in China came out earlier today and said that they would be minded to oppose any forced shotgun sale of TikTok to a US entity, which leaves TikTok in a kind of invidious position. I don't think it necessarily would want and welcome that Chinese statement, which kind of proves the point here that we're trying to get across, which is if this was a deep state Communist Party plot, then they would surely be kind of, not getting involved in it quite so much. They would want to be making the path smoother for TikTok to try and ingratiate itself into the West rather than making it more difficult.
Really interesting to speak to you, Chris Stokel-Walker. Thanks very much for taking the time to join us.